Hello, John.
Hello.
Today we're doing a video on Mass in the past, the Catholic Mass. We will also be doing a video later on, maybe, on Mass today. So can you tell us, in the past you had the Latin Mass?
That's right. When I grew up, when I was growing up as a young person, Mass was celebrated in Latin. Latin was the universal language of the Catholic Church. So in Ireland, as in other countries, Latin was the order of the day by priests, and also probably other sectors of the Catholic faith like monks and nuns. Now, the Latin Mass, at the Latin Mass, no matter what time you were at Mass, there was always the priest facing the altar and two altar boys at the time. So that was the way it was done as regards the practice of the Catholic Mass. And the reason for facing the altar, by the way, was that's where our divine Saviour Jesus was is in the tabernacle. This is why you have a sanctuary lamp in the Catholic Church, lighting at all times, normally facing the tabernacle where our divine Saviour Jesus, according to what he laid down, was supposed to be practiced.
For anybody who doesn't know what a tabernacle is, what is a tabernacle?
The tabernacle is where the host, when you receive Holy Communion, the tabernacle is where the hosts are protected and situated. It's normally locked, and it's a very important part of the church, the Catholic Church. In other words, when you go visit a Catholic church, you generally pray facing the altar.
Okay. What's the function of an altar boy?
The altar boy was to assist the Catholic priest in the Mass by providing when the water and wine changed into the body and blood of Christ. The celebration of the Mass involved that the priest is there as the representative of our divine Saviour Jesus Christ. So that's the altar boy assists the priest in the practice of the Holy Mass.
And the sermon and the pulpit?
Now, Mass was celebrated in Latin. Most of the congregation would have had a missal that would be in the Latin and the language of the country, in this case English, or in part of Ireland, the west of Ireland, those people that spoke Irish as their main language, it would be in Gaelic. Now, so they were able to follow the Mass. Now the priest, when it come to giving a sermon, which is what it was called, he went up to the pulpit. A pulpit was where the priest gave the sermon. He walked up steps so as the congregation could see him. When he addressed the congregation, the words he used was, "My dear brethren." That was the words he used when he was giving the sermon, and it was a sermon. He spoke about perhaps the gospel of that day, and then gave a sermon applicable to the conditions of the area of the parish in which he was in. So he married the sermon to the local area also. As a matter of fact, there were very superior sermons in my time in the Catholic Church.
Did the Mass maybe go on for a long time?
The Mass usually lasted nearly an hour because it was the priests. Normally a parish had a parish priest and at least 2 or 3 curates, so that when Holy Communion occurred, the altar boys assisted the priests in giving Holy Communion to the congregation, which knelt at the altar rails, which had linen cloth which the congregation, when they were receiving Holy Communion, put their hands under, the priest was assisted by the altar boy who held a paten, and that's a little, it's called a paten. It's something that you could put under your chin, so as when the priest was giving you Holy Communion, if an accident happened, the communion host fell on the paten rather than the ground. It was it was to do with respect for the important business of receiving Holy Communion.
What's a thurible?
A thurible was also an altar boy would use, and he would. It was incense that was placed in what they call a monstrance. It has a container at the bottom and a chain, so there would be ashes in that could be not lit, but there would be smoke. So he swung that, and incense come around, which was also a form of honouring the divine presence of our divine Saviour Jesus in the Mass.
So this is the actual device that they hold. I think it has 3 chains on it, and they swing it from side to side.
From side to side.
And then you see, I think it's like smoke coming out.
That's right, and incense, which kind of the congregation would be able to sort of notice was in the church, that they would throw off an aroma.
Okay. The consecration bell. Can you explain that
to me? Before when the bell was rung at the Sanctus, which was prior to the consecration, which is the very important period in the Mass when the priest invokes what our divine Saviour Jesus asked his followers, the apostles, to do in his memory, which was the body and blood of our divine Saviour Jesus. So at consecration, the priest facing the altar, the first part, which is the body of our divine Saviour Jesus. So he did face the altar and sideways 3 times, and the bell was rung 3 times by the altar boy. And then at the second part, of the blood of our divine Saviour Jesus, when he did that part of the consecration, he took 3 turns doing it, facing the congregation and the altar first, and the altar boy rings the bell 3 times also. The congregation struck their breast 3 times for the first part, and then 3 times for that second part. That was part and parcel of the Catholic faith and the way it was practiced in the past, and in some Latin churches, and some masses where the Latin is the language used by the priest to this day, but it's not as widespread as it was in my young days.
So can we talk about the weekly Rosary and Benediction?
This was another practice of the Catholic faith, that every week there was Rosary and Benediction, which lasted half an hour. The Rosary, depending on the mysteries that were celebrated.
So when you say the mysteries,
well, there's the joyful mysteries, the glorious mysteries, and the sorrowful mysteries of the Rosary. So that's the mysteries, and then there's 5 decades, which is normally involves Our Father, 10 Hail Marys, and glory be to the Father. But that was said at least once a week, sometimes twice a week. And then after the Rosary there was Benediction, which was usually there was 3 hymns sung, which was the Tanta Marga, the Salutarius, and I think there was another hymn, the Adoramus. So there again, the host was in a monstrance, was held up and facing the tabernacle, and also then the congregation, 3 moves by the priest. A very important practice in the Catholic faith, which is now sadly no longer practiced.
Can we discuss sodalities and whether sodality has been eroded, do you think, in the church?
Well, they're not there anymore. There was men's sodalities in this country, and no doubt in other Catholic countries throughout the world. There was men's sodalities which occurred once a month, and women's sodalities, which occurred once a month, for the women of the parish and for the men of the parish. So the men went to the sodality, which normally lasted perhaps about 3/4 of an hour, and it would have involved a sermon and a Rosary and Benediction also. So all the men in the parish or in the town attended the monthly sodality, which was for them.
When you say all the men, you mean all just men?
Yeah, well, because it was a men's sodality for just men, and then every month there was a sodality just for women.
Okay.
So it's because their roles was considered separate, and their needs were often a bit different. So they were catered for very much so, and a very important part of the naturally of the practice of the Catholic faith in the churches. So when the men attended the men's sodality, oftentimes there were so many that they went into individual parts depending on what part of the town they were from, and likewise the women. So that by and large, well, every fortnight there was either a men's sodality or a women's sodality, and part of the duties, by the way, was for the attend confession, because Holy Communion was given out at the men's sodality and the women's sodality.
This is what I want to ask you about confession. Confession was probably very popular in Mass in the past. What is confession? What's the function of confession?
Well, confession was practiced very much so by Catholics when I was growing up, and even up to the 1960s or mid-60s. Before you went to Holy Communion, if you had any sins by way of venial sins or other sins of omission, or perhaps you had missed Mass for one reason or another one day, so you'd be obliged to go to confession. As a matter of fact, confession was, now they call it reconciliation, but the word confession has stuck in my mind and in the mind of many Catholics of my generation, because that's what it was called, and usually it was well attended, very much well attended. There would normally be the parish priest and maybe 2 or 3 curés on duty, and usually for an hour, 2 hours every week, and also prior to holidays of obligation. And men and women, young and old, went to confession. It was considered a very important practice of your Catholic faith.
I just want to discuss funerals. In the past, was there more people at funerals, or is it more or less the same now?
Well, it is. Funerals were always well attended by people in the particular town or parish where somebody died. They were well attended by all at the time, and as I say, the practice of the Catholic faith was practiced by all people that were Catholics by and large. They attended Mass and they attended funerals. Now, a lot of people today, especially young people, do not attend Mass, but they do attend funerals. And it's sad to say, because of their lack of attendance at Mass, sometimes they don't know how to say a prayer for the departed ones that they're there for to sort of remember. Their attendance is important, but prayers should be said for the departed. The priest often says the prayers, but people sometimes, because they're not going to Mass, they don't know their prayers.
Okay, John, we're going to cover Mass in the present as it is today in our next video, and thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Video. Thank you.